so than, say, Wilson and the other brand did in the 60s. But he's brought him back from the European Union as the Svengali and as the sort of witch doctor Moncay to work a bit of spin and to work a bit of magic in relation to this collapse which is occurring. And it's an extraordinary and systematic collapse because we're having two collapses rolled into one. One is the banks going down because they've made incredibly dodgy and very stupid and semi-criminal investments with other people's money that they never thought they would see the day when they would be asked for it back. It's a sort of a schoolboy error writ large. These securities are very complicated, but they are made deliberately complicated. When a businessman sells you something that's so complicated, even he can't explain it well, you know it's a scam. And that's what's been going on, dressed up with endless language and jurisprudence and philosophy of law and rings of professors prating on about it. That's what's really been going on. It's a large scam. All of these things, leveraged buyout deals, taking a company over, sacking half the staff, ripping out the assets of it, moving to another one, you know, these sorts of antics where you never create anything but more and more money that feeds on itself, that you then stick in one bank, that you then move to a Russian bank, that you then move to a Saudi bank, that you then move to a Japanese bank, that you then put in the American mortgage system. It feeds on itself, and in the end it will eat itself. There's a very bad pop band called Pop Will Eat Itself. And what's happening is that this type of advanced fiscal sort of capitalism is eating itself. It's eating itself alive. And the basic reason, put in very simplistic terms, is because it doesn't make anything. It doesn't produce anything that's real. It just produces more and more money based upon debt. And we're all sucked into debt. Every man, every woman, every child in the womb owns, aggregated out, indigenous or immigrant, in Britain, in Wales, at the present time, £10,000 each. And that excludes mortgages. That's all the cards, all the store cards and all the debit cards and all the other debts that people have amassed in the last 20 years to live the lifestyle that says, for a significant proportion of our people, that what's going on in this country isn't happening. Because people have privatised in certain classes, they privatise themselves out of what's going on. They don't have to live in the areas where it's occurring, they don't really wish to see it, they can be comforted by it. As parts of the country become third world, people begin to live in the way that the elites do in third world countries. In Venezuela, a rich man's daughter goes to the shops, they'll have several heavies with her, with machine guns. And they'll go in 4x4s, and bazookas can come out the sides of them and this sort of thing. They live in gated areas where you go through and you swipe a card through a gate and grills open and you go into private compounds that are virtually outside the remit of the state. This is the sort of way in which the elite lives in South Africa, it's where the elite lives in Brazil, it's where the elite lives in the Caribbean, it's how our elite partly live in London now. Partly live in London now, and certainly would live in Birmingham. London has changed to such a degree that it's unrecognisable from the city that it was 40 to 50 years ago. I mean, it's nice for me to speak to a meeting in North Wales, because the last time I spoke to a meeting in London, it was attacked by a small left-wing group who attacked the police, basically, and were gassed. Yeah, it's a dangerous word. They were gassed, sprayed with CS gas, and dragged off. 6 were arrested. Antifa, this group was called. 6 were arrested, 5 were male, and 1 was female. Now, I watched this from a distance. It didn't look too female to me, but maybe it was some sort of androgyne in boots, you know, let's leave it at that. But the degree to which there's a great irony here, because as the international capitalist order of the present time fractures and becomes deeply unsteady, no one's looking to the left at all. Even they know it, even on their blogs and their websites here, in Wales, in Britain, all over the world, they know that people won't look to them. Because the sort of ultra-liberal capitalism that's failing at the moment, in a way, is the provenance of New Labour and the Conservatives, and to a lesser extent the reworked Liberal Democrats. But the far left have beliefs that are totally discredited by the failure of state socialism and communism in the 20th century. All the left can do is oppose us. That's their whole raison d'etre now. There are 2 sources of opposition to what is failing at the present time. One are forms of religiosity, which the elite perceives as being the province of groups that have come into the society, such as Muslims who have an Islamist interpretation of their own faith, and the radical right within indigenous societies and population groups. They're the only two sources of real political opinion which are opposed to the present nexus. If Cameron gets in 2009 or 2010, he will not do one jot different to Brown, and Clegg will never get in, but may support some minority government, may go into coalition of the sort you have here in Wales, where they all say they loathe each other, but then after the election they pick up the pieces and they all collaborate. You've had Labour on its own, because Labour is regarded to Wales as its fiefdom, it's regarded as a private province of its own, like parts of middle Scotland, or parts of the northern cities, or the northeast of England, or Liverpool. Liverpool are regarded as a sort of fiefdom of their own. Now, Labour declines a bit, gets the Liberals in. The Liberals say they detest Labour, fight with them tooth and nail in the northern cities and in some London boroughs, but they go in with them in Cardiff Bay, just like that. Now, the Nationalists, Plaid, the Party of Wales, Plaid Cymru. You seem to have dropped the Cymru, which is always very odd, because they're supposed to be nationalists of a Welsh and Celtic character, admittedly, and yet Plaid Cymru is too Welsh a name. They just call itself the Party. The Party's very totalitarian, isn't it? The Party, dot, dot, dot. It's like Albania rather than Wales, isn't it? You know. And now they've gone in with Labour after being daggers drawn for basically the whole of the 20th century. So this is it's very interesting, and it means that the pot is stirring, even in Wales, even in Scotland, where you have a minority Scottish nationalist government. But of course, what kind of nationalism do these Celtic nationalist parties offer? What they offer is a sort of non-British version of the liberalism that's on offer elsewhere. Anyone can come to Scotland, according to Alex Salmond, who's an effective political speaker and activist within the mainstream currency of present Edinburgh politics, and yet at the same time, anyone can be Scottish, anyone can move to Scotland from anywhere in the world. The leader of Plaid, as it's now called here in Wales, would say exactly the same thing. And they want to get out of the British Union, but they don't want to be on their own. Oh no, they don't want to be on their own. They don't want to be on their own at all. They want to get into the European Union firmer and in a more federal way. They want a Scottish province of a federal Europe because they're terrified to stand alone. No one seems to want to stand alone in this life. And one of the reasons is that they're all clinging on to each other and the life raft as the international capital system rocks around them. Great waves come up onto the raft and blow a few off. So this is the sort of situation that we see at the present time. People are literally clinging together. I've never quite seen in my own lifetime the international salaria of politicians, the international clerisy, our rulers, if you like, in the system that inherent rule, because it's so difficult to discern who's really in charge of it. And yet at the same time, I haven't seen them as frightened as this. Not in my lifetime. This is a major moment. This trumps anything like the oil crisis when the Arabs punished the West for supporting Israel, and this sort of thing in the mid-70s. This is extraordinarily deep and very, very severe, because we import most of what we sell here. We make nothing. The fiscal services are about a third of our effective economy. I was taken the last time I was in Liverpool for a ride around the industrial districts of Liverpool, and we found one factory making bouncy castles. This was once a city that provided industrial goods for the entire world. The entire industries in the centre of Birmingham, for example, have been stripped out. Have you seen what's happened to Birmingham recently? Lots of English people who used to live in Birmingham now apparently live in Wales. So a Welsh nationalist leader has said, apparently, that lots of English people are moving to Wales to get away from what's happened in Birmingham. What has happened in Birmingham? Well, it's no longer the Chamberlain City, let's put it that way. What you've seen is in the centre of Birmingham, areas have become third worldised to the degree that they're unrecognisable as English areas. I was driven once through Handsworth. Handsworth is 80% non-white, and is a pretty big area, right in the middle of the city. People in the English Midlands refer to it as the occupied territories, like as if it's in the Middle East, but it's actually in the middle of England, in England's second city. Now, we're in Wales, but these things are universal in the sense that they're happening all over Britain, and they're happening all over the West, and they're happening all over Western Europe. We are, within a week or two, less than that, of possibly the election of the first non-white